So I got a question for y'all. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Scottie Pippen was closing out the Jazz in 2000 in Game 5, hitting back-to-back clutch threes and all that, he's hitting back-to-back clutch threes, and Kevin Frazier was announcing on ESPN. So after the first three hits, Kevin Frazier goes, "Hey, Pippen ain't easy."
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe is how you get outline.
Hey, and then after he hit the second three, Kevin Frazier shouted out, "Pips up, hose down." So what's up, y'all? We are the Hoopstorians. We are back and worse than ever. It is August 26th, 2025. Let's get into this day in NBA history. This day in NBA history, August 26, 2004. Stephon Marbury scores a team record, U.S. Olympic scoring record, 31 points against Spain at the Athens Olympics. What do you guys think of Marbury, and what do you think of where he ultimately is? Do you think he wasted his talent, exceeded his talent, right where he should be, or what do you think about Stephon Marbury as a player?
Yeah, he wasted his talent. I mean, he was in Minnesota with Kevin Garnett. He wanted to get out of there. Then he went to Phoenix, and then he got then he was with the Nets. He gets traded for Jason Kidd. The Nets immediately become a contender, a pretty weak one at that. Phoenix is still, I think, a basement tier team. Then Steve Nash takes that team over, and they are one of the greatest offenses I've ever seen. Then he goes to New York, and he's famously like on his cell phone on the side of the court, like he's holding out, he's like done. He had some good moments, like the 2001 All-Star game actually is the only thing that really comes to mind with him and Iverson. I think they got
0-3 game winner, game one in the playoffs against the Spurs.
Yeah, game winner, game one in the playoffs against the Spurs. So yeah, I think he wasted his talent. I mean, he sold really cheap and popular shoes, so I guess good for him. But as far as a basketball player, I think there could have been a lot more there. I think he left a lot on the table.
Jules.
Yeah. No, you said it perfectly. Everything you said, I would have said. I think that he wasted his talent, and it's unfortunate because of the circumstances that happen. Usually, right after that, he leaves, that a team is becoming successful. Along with that USA then team record, it's ironic that that's the same year that everybody kind of goes towards, is that that was somewhat of a failure team. But if you look at the roster, they had the best accumulative talent that they could have found, and unfortunately one of them was Stephon Marbury. He had that talent to be the guy. People believed in him, but his ego got in the way.
Hey, would you guys say from a basketball player perspective, like, body, skill set, obviously not they accomplish what you do with the mental state, but just, from the skill set, the body weight, would you say Stephon Marbury should have been better than Allen Iverson?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, just based on, I think he has a little bit, maybe an inch or two height advantage, has a little bit more, I think, meat on him. Had the skills, but I mean, it's kind of hard because Iverson just, everybody said pound for pound was the best scorer in the league, pound for pound. So maybe he could have, but Allen Iverson he had that thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jules, what do you think?
I would agree. I think the physical intangibles and the physical traits would obviously lead him to a little bit more greatness. But I think that the motor that he had was unfortunately not great enough to excel him forward. That's why I would take Iverson specifically over Marbury. I think they're both equally as skilled, but Allen Iverson, like Hoop said, is what people say is the greatest pound for pound scorer in NBA history. And his motor was off the charts. He was having to give 30 plus for those Sixers teams early on.
Hey, I couldn't have said it any better myself, so I'll shut up. And that was this day in NBA history. All right. So, Jules, I'm going to kind of let you get into this to start us off with because you're the one that originally brought up this topic. And I was intrigued by it. Let's talk about the balance of powers historically throughout the conferences, and kind of tell us where you want to go with it. And then I got my own thoughts on it as well.
Yeah. So in some of these kind of debates that we have on our platform on TikTok, there's been some rumblings about these all-time great players and what they're producing isn't necessarily leading to the amount of accumulated wins that should, put them into the playoffs. And in talking and trying to do my research, my due diligence, is everybody here I know, but not a lot of people know that for the most part, for the conferences, it was a huge kind of weird inception of how everything started. They had I believe it's in 1971 or 1970 when they started the conferences, and they accumulated the teams and the expansion as henceforth. But for a large period of time until recently, about 10 years ago, they used division winners as automatic playoff bids to basically exemplify the best team in a division should make the playoff. My thing has always been that I don't necessarily care about the division wins. I think that's a cool and all when it encompasses to sports as a division winner. People are some teams put up those banners, but we're in a day and age now where we don't use division winners anymore. So my question essentially really is should conferences still be a thing, or should we abolish them because of the amount of rule changes that have been changed over the 50, 60 years of the start of conferences and divisions and that kind of thing?
Hoops, I'm kicking it to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think at this juncture, so the West has been the dominant conference in terms of top to bottom talent and good teams for, I would say, about 30 years now. I'd say it started to taper off in the 90s. The East was the dominant conference in the 80s, and people would say, oh, it's cyclical. It's all going to come back around, and the East is going to be more dominant. And we didn't really see that happen. We haven't really seen that happen. Now, obviously, when we talk about players that are, just their dominance relative to the conference they play in. Obviously, LeBron and Magic Johnson come up a lot because they played in quote unquote weaker conferences that they dominated. Chris Paul, I think, is a casualty of playing in a tougher conference. People compare him to Jason Kidd and say, well, Jason Kidd made 2 finals. Well, that conference that Jason Kidd made 2 finals on absolutely sucked. So we're at this point now where we have a lot of organizations like the Thunder, which is obviously used to be the Sonics, always a strong organization. The Lakers, the Spurs, even the Clippers have now, under Steve Ballmer, become a steady contending playoff team. The Nuggets, even before Jokic, were always in a serious organization. Even Portland, right? And so you have all these teams in the West that are contending. Meanwhile, you have people like Reisendorf in Chicago, who's just content to kind of live off the Jordan years and live off the name and the branding that and the fruits of that, instead of actually building a contender and being okay with being like a regular play-in team. And then you have like the Hawks have just made moves this year, but they've generally been a mid-tier team for the entirety of their existence outside of the Bob Pettit era. And so I think a more NFL style approach where we start to break this up a bit, and even the divisions, they don't mean a lot until it comes to playoff seeding. The Lakers got the 3rd seed in the playoffs, right? But the Nuggets could have gotten the 3rd seed in the playoffs, except they had the misfortune of being in the same division as the Thunder. Is that fair? I don't think so. So I think we should go to a more NFL style where we have the South, the North, the East, the South, Northeast, and West, but break that up a little bit into a American Basketball Conference, National Basketball Conference. Will it happen? No, you need Board of Governors approval and all that other stuff, but I think it's something that should happen in the interest of parity.
Yeah, I've been with abolishing the conference bare minimum since 2007. 2007, the championship matchup was the Spurs and Suns, and that was in the second round.
Yeah.
I really quit watching. I really quit watching after that. To be honest with you, I mean, I checked in a few here watching the Spurs mop the Jazz, and then checked in a few here and there watching the Spurs mop the Cavs. But if there's not a compelling reason to watch it, I just don't want to watch one team kick the shit out of the other, especially if I got no dog in the fight.
Sure.
I'm with it on that. I think that obviously, I think you should play the most games closer to your home. So obviously, I think like abolishing the conference, but give 4 games like with Boston to New York, New Jersey, Philly, that area, and then you kind of taper it off the further away you go. So you can still kind of have the game structure to cut down on flights and travel and things like that. But I think throughout the game, especially with the chartered flights, the commercial flights now, it's just you and your teammates. You got all this kind of room to stretch out. You're playing, you know what I mean? It's a fun trip. You got catered food on there. You got masseuses on there. I just don't think travel is that big a deal. And at the end of the day, the goal of any league is you just want the best 2 teams at the end. That's really what you want to do. This team's been killing it on one end, and ultimately that's why you set it up. So it looks like I dominate, and we look at that because we have such a binarial system sorting. It's the haves, have-nots, the yeses, the nos, the East, the West, the this, the that. You know what I mean? So you want one team to dominate one side, another team to dominate the other side, and then you bring that in the middle. But no, I don't think there should be conferences anymore. Especially like years of like 2014, the Suns. They're winning 48 games and they're not making the playoffs. When other teams are winning like 41 games and making the playoffs. Same thing in 08 with what was it, the Warriors, right after the We Believe Warriors, they won 48 games and they didn't make the playoffs in 2008.
The Suns in 09 as well.
Yeah, Suns in 09, 46 and 36. So yeah, it is cyclical in the fact that, but it's huge cyclical because the East were the dominant conference for about 30 years overall, and now the West has been the dominant conference, for the last, 25 by far. There's been a few blips here and there, like 2010, for example. The 4 best teams, 3 of them were in the East, 1 of them was in the West, but then the rest of the next, probably 7 best teams were in the West, something like that. Because it was, the top 4 teams in that, it was Orlando, Cleveland, Boston, and the Lakers, and somehow that would have been the best way to get the Final 4 going if we could have done that. But, you run into series where like Boston and Cleveland are meeting in the second round. So one of the top 4 teams now is out in the second round. And meanwhile, the West, they're not top heavy. So we've seen some scenarios like that where the East has caught up in top heavy, a few years more so than the West. I think 2011 was a good example, about 4 teams then. I think the top 4 teams in 2011 were better than the West team in 2011. But yeah, I'm done with abolishing the conferences.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think I've always been in the terms of get your top 16 teams and put them in a playoff format because I care about the team wins and just go from 1 to 16, 2 to 15, and so on and so forth. And in the divisions, obviously, I try to look up a couple instances where a division winner is getting a higher seed. And ironically, the Jazz a couple times since, or at least post 2000, got the benefit of the doubt because they're winning their division. They're getting a 2 or 3 seed over teams that have more total wins, but they didn't win the division. So it's something that you just brought on, Tony. So like, to me, I have always felt as if the more amount of wins that you have, the more deserving you should be in the playoffs because you're just a better team because you win more games. But when I bring this up in argument was the specific argument with the Kareem thing. He's missing the playoffs in his prime, and he's one of the people that I think this directly affected because when he's on the Bucks in 75, he has a total of 38 wins, and he's not a top 2 team in the division. As soon as he leaves, that Bucks team maintains the same amount of wins as 38 wins, the same amount of wins when Kareem leaves with Marquise Johnson, and they're the division winner. But the context isn't necessarily brought out because the Kansas City Kings at the time are a 50-plus win team. They go down to about 20-ish wins. The Detroit Pistons were number 2. They lose 6 more games, and I forget the third team off the top of my head. So it's this disingenuous stuff to where now the superstars are basically being affected by the rules and regulations in their prime. So Tony, where would you say, or would you, effectively use that against a superstar if they're not in the prime, or while they're in their prime with the rules and regulations, because of the fact that the rules are now hindering them to even make the playoffs as is? Or you're more like just, they should have got more wins in totality?
If I'm evaluating a player, like for me to get to that level, like we'll use Kareem, for example. Nowhere about Kareem missing the playoffs in, 76 when he went 40 and 42 or whatever. I just, nowhere is that in. Like we'd have to have so many ties for me to get to that level. That's like way down the end, because like I said, I care about titles, MVPs, things like that. Most players have missed the playoffs, unless you're like Bill Russell or Tim Duncan. You probably missed the playoffs somewhere in your career. So yeah, I just don't look at that like that. But kind of to piggyback off what you were saying, I think a more recent example we can look at this, and it's not missing the playoffs, but it's completely throwing it out of whack. You look at the 2006 standings. The Denver Nuggets got the 3rd seed because they won the division. They were 44 and 38. A 3rd seed was a 44 win team. The Mavericks were a 60 win team, and they got the 4th seed. Not only that, they played the Clippers in 06, and they lost in 5. And the Clippers had home court advantage. So what the hell's the point of being the 3rd seed if you don't even have home court advantage, in the first round? Things like that. And then, arguably, especially with the injuries, arguably the Spurs and the Mavericks were probably the 2 best teams in the conference, when you factor in the Suns' injuries. And that's another second round matchup, in 2006. The 2 best teams that were playing in the second round because of weird, wonky things like that. So no, I'm not hindering it, like, especially if you look at the rules on it, where it's like I'm one of the best teams, I just didn't get a chance to show it. I wouldn't do that. But then we've seen a more recent example in 06 where, like I said, obviously a 44-win team, unless it's the 3rd most wins in the conference, doesn't belong at the 3rd seed, especially over a 60-win team.
Yeah, Hoops, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well said. I mean, we also, beyond the wonky division stuff, we've also had to see some pretty boring ass finals because of the Eastern Western Conference. I think of the 0-2 finals in particular, and how awful and boring it was after the incredible 7-game series that we watched. The Kings and Lakers, and sometimes that will happen, sure, but like you also look at, I think even like the 2018, right? Like LeBron brings that Cavs team to the finals, but they have no business being there. And the real finals was the 2018 Warriors and Rockets, and then. What do we see there? Again, a fun game 1, but then again, it's just a blowout after that. A pretty boring finals. Same thing really in 24, I think. But what bothers me about 24 is the Western Conference is better. The Celtics, I think, are clearly better than everybody else, but they have this incredible cakewalk to the finals because they're not only playing teams that aren't that good, they're also playing teams that aren't healthy. But I would have liked to see the Celtics maybe match up against the Nuggets, right? Or maybe even the Timberwolves. I think that would have been a more entertaining series if it's on the pathway to the finals. Again, I think they're the best team. They probably would have won anyway. I don't know. But I would have liked to see a few more exciting matchups for a team that was like historically great rather than, the Heat without Jimmy, the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell, and the Pacers without Tyrese Halliburton.
Hey, I got a question for the panel. I got a question for the panel. It made me think of this because you brought this up earlier. Out of curiosity, which year or which era, what would you say, who do you think has the worst conference ever?
So I think it happened. For me, it's the early 2000 East is the worst conference ever. Because you have like the Celtics and Nets conference finals, a 48-win team versus like a 50-win team, or maybe a 49-win team, where you have Paul Pierce and Antoine Walker. going toe to toe with Jason Kidd and like Keith Van Horn. And like, yeah, I know Kidd and Pierce are Hall of Fame players and all that. And it was actually a good series, but we knew what was going to happen. Those teams were going to get wiped by the Lakers. And then the following year, the Nets make it again, I think over the Pistons, and the Pistons hadn't really ascended into being that like really good team yet. And then even the 07 Cavs, that's one of the worst teams to make the finals as well, even though LeBron's playing for them. So you do have the 06 Heat. That's, that I think that's an anomaly. The 04 Pistons too. But again, I think the early 2000s East is probably the worst conference because no contender had emerged yet. And from like 2000, I would say 2001 to 2003 is probably, I'd say, the worst.
To me, I would probably say the from like 80 to like maybe 85, that conference that we highlighted a little bit before. But I was trying to look into standings for the history, and I did have a friend kind of highlight this for me because I found it somewhat interesting. I wouldn't say it's the worst division, but I find it kind of funny. Is that in 1998, the Western Conference has 360 win teams and a total of 555 plus win teams. So in on face value, I find that as a strong conference. But as the bottom feeders of the teams in the Western Conference, I count, I believe, 6 sub 30 win teams all in the same conference. So the dichotomy of just the Western Conference in amongst itself, you can add the fact that some of them are kind of, I guess, expansion teams or just they weren't drafting well. That's fine. But a conference that have 6 55 plus win teams along with 6 sub 30 win teams, and if you really want to go with it, 5 sub 20 win teams is pretty interesting in my opinion.
I do want to just to make a point about the 80s West. So the 87 Lakers, which is considered Magic Johnson's best team, one of the 5-ish greatest.
That's actually where I was going with this, Hoops.
Yeah, who'd they play? They played the pre-Gary Payton.
So hold on, just to let you know, because I already know it. They beat the 37 win Nuggets, the 42 win Warriors, and in the conference finals, the vaunted 39 win Sonics.
Dale Ellis, yeah, and Tom Chambers, yeah.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. And not a lot of people talk about it. And when people say, the competition, the level of competition is now just better, it's something to note, but it's not necessarily something to where I'm so moved by the competition is better now than it is ever. This guy says who's better, Tim Duncan or Bron?
I will humor it. It's LeBron James.
Wait a minute. Well, this is what he says too. He needs an honest answer with reasoning.
Sure. Okay. LeBron James. It's LeBron James. He has the greatest longevity in the history of the NBA. He wins 4 championships as the best player on his team, probably the same as Duncan. He does make more finals appearances. He has more individual accolades. He has more MVPs. He's the best player in the world for solidly a decade. Tim Duncan's the best player in the world, maybe 4 or 5 years. Is that good enough? Is that good enough, or should we go on?
I don't know. Maybe he wants basketball reasonings from skill sets.
Skill set. Okay, cool. Skill set. Okay, so Tim Duncan is a better, I guess, defender overall. He's definitely a better low post defender and a better rebounder. But LeBron is so clearly a better offensive player. LeBron's probably the greatest offensive player of all time when you consider his combination of efficient scoring and top 5 level playmaking. And LeBron in his peak is one of the better defenders we've ever seen. Probably one of the top 2 or 3 defenders at the small forward position in his peak for a superstar. So neither of them won depoys. Obviously, Duncan's a better defender, but it's still LeBron.
Yeah, and then I would say when you add in the factor of the athleticism as well.
Yeah.
He's a faster player. He jumps higher. He moves better laterally. So And then now they want you to give a reason why Duncan's better.
I literally can't. Like, okay,
Well,
Duncan.
I mean, you say he's better at defense, so the things he's better at.
Okay, he's better defender. He's a better rebounder.
Better screener, better low post scorer.
Better screener, maybe a better low post scorer, Tony. I don't know. I mean, once LeBron develops his post game, he's pretty much unstoppable. So, yeah, he's a better defender and rebounder, I guess. Like that. I mean, there really isn't much. He wins more championships. I guess you can put that there. He wins more championships, but that's.
What about you, Jules? When you break down the players, what would you say?
As being a Spurs fan, I guess I can kind of make the argument. Tim Duncan had the same expectation of
better leader,
being the first overall pick. Better, yeah, definitely. I would say definitely better leader, and I think hit the ground team guy and all of defensive second team guy wins championship in less amount of years, so his impact to winning on his teammates, his floor raising off rip could be a little bit better. I think Tim Duncan could play within a system, whatever you kind of asked him to do at a younger age, impacting in a better conference to leading to 50 plus wins rather continuously. So I think if there was an argument that Tim Duncan could be over LeBron, try to harp on his younger years, probably pre-03, before LeBron gets drafted, to say that his impact to winning in a tougher conference and his teammates that he's elevating, and even highlighting the 03 run, where I'm watching Steven Jackson basically be a basketball terrorist and just doing awful for the Spurs. Like, it was disgusting. So you could harp on that.
Here's my rebuttal to that. I think you can talk about Duncan 03 and how he takes a team with I think an average supporting cast and brings them to the finals and wins the title. I think LeBron does the same thing with an equally average to bad cast in 2018. The only difference is he doesn't run into the KD Warriors. He runs into the Nets. So I don't it's not even fanboying. I think this is a pretty consensus opinion that LeBron is a better and greater player than Duncan. It's not much of an argument. You have to go to, he's a better leader. LeBron's still a great leader. Maybe Duncan starts off as a better leader. Sure, I can give you that. He also starts in a much better situation with a better coach. But LeBron's still a great leader once he matures, like 2012. That run from 2012 to 2020. Even now, he's still a great leader. So even then, even leadership and all those like intangible things. It's just there's not much of an argument. What happened in 2007? Yeah, really. Oh my God.
I was gonna say, really, like, to be honest with you, young Duncan, those rounds that he did against the Knicks and Lakers in '99, and he kind of kicked back in the other rounds, but like that would really best eye test wise, that's the best Duncan to me. I mean, like what he did to Shaq, I think he averaged 30 in that second round. The games were only in the 90s. In 1999. So yeah, I mean, like shit like that. Yeah, I don't think 99 Duncan gets talked about enough and all that. Also, too, now that we're on this, I got a question because we normally don't do this, but you guys each have LeBron as the GOAT. What is this new thing about trying to pick apart LeBron's game like he's got no skill, no talent? Somehow he's lucked his way into 40,000 points and a bunch of MVPs and 10,000. Like what is this? Yeah, I see people try to scrutinize his game more than anybody. Just because he might not have the 6 dribble crossover in a row stuff, but he only needs a move or two to get to his spot, and that's all you need.
If I can go first of all, I'm going to say this guy, Raptors insider. I imagine he's got a lot of trauma from the mid 2010s with LeBron James, and maybe that's why he has these opinions. But yeah, I think it's to elevate guys who have a more aesthetic game, a more fluid game, like Kobe or Michael Jordan. And it's funny. The funny thing about the no skill thing with LeBron James is every time you say he doesn't have something, someone's got a legit 10-minute highlight reel of him doing that exact thing. Oh, he doesn't have a bump shoulder fade. Well, here's a bunch of bump shoulder fades. oh, he doesn't have a bag or he doesn't have a crossover. Oh, here's him dribbling, going behind his back and through somebody's legs, right? Oh, he doesn't have this, he doesn't have that. He has everything. That's what puts him in this conversation, that he's elite at literally every aspect of the game. So I think trying to pick it apart, I think is again to elevate other players. But I think in terms of like he's the most complete player of all time. So every time they try to find something that he quote unquote doesn't have, there's usually like a bunch of examples of him using it and using it effectively. So what happened in 2011? What happened to Dirk in 2006? What happened to Dirk in 2007? What happened to Dirk in 2003? What happened to Tim Duncan in 2011? What happened to Dirk in 2010?
That's what I was about to say.
What happened to Dirk in 2010 when he's the 2 seed? What happened then?
Jules, what do you think about the picking apart of LeBron's game?
So this is what I was going to say, is that I was in this argument today because not with LeBron specifically. It was a Giannis and a Tatum argument, right? And it's like, we all know that Giannis isn't necessarily skilled, but he is this strong force that can basically just slash his way to the rim in basically 2.5 strides and just dunk on, everybody. But he's giving you in certain series 34 and 16, and he's losing in 5 because other players are injured and that kind of stuff. So when we talk about, this is why I hate the bag argument so much, because I don't care about your bag. It's about putting the ball in the basket. Just because you do it cooler than somebody else doesn't mean that you're going to be necessarily better than anyone else. So to me, it's not necessarily like Hoop said, you can't just luck yourself into 40,000 points. No one does that. You have to do it at a sustained level for such a long time. Now, me and him do have LeBron as the GOAT, but I understand the criticisms of LeBron James, and I put them at face value, and I understand and I accept them. I don't try to make excuses. I don't try to deny anything, but it's a lot of what the other people try to, when I debate with people, they try to hide and deny and deflect. That I'm just like, I'm saying everything is, there's faults to his game. No player is perfect. Everybody has a black stain on on the argument of why they can be the GOAT. And if you value something over something else, I can't change that, but we can debate and argue about it to say that, this is what I value, that's what you value, and we can move on. We're not going to change a lot of people's opinions.
Again, just to answer the prompt, I think it's totally fine to have Russell and MJ over LeBron. I think there's a totally reasonable argument for that. Tony has Russell and MJ over LeBron. I think that's fine. I don't have an issue with it. There is no argument for Duncan. There's none. Zero. That's it.
Yeah, and
again, Raptors Insider. Just the rat, because he's calling us fanboys. Raptors Insider. We know why you don't like LeBron. We know why you don't like LeBron.
Because
you're a Raptors fan, and I get it. I would hate him
too. To note as well is what I find disingenuous about the people who fanboy over LeBron is when they're having the GOAT debate with people. They will go immediately to, well, if you're valuing winning so much, you have to have Russell as the GOAT, and not act like Bill Russell already has an argument to be the GOAT. Not even just amongst winning, 5-time MVP, leading one of the best defenses of all time for a sustained stretch of time, elevating his players, like all this kind of stuff that you can factor in, being, the outlet pass, the rebounding, all this kind of stuff, to where it's like, why does it just have to be about winning? His intangibles in amongst itself relative to era can lead and have a legitimate case to be the GOAT.
Well, not only that too, when you factor in he's got series where he's averaging 7 assists and 24 points and things like that. How do you think we would value Melo, who's primarily a one-way player offensively, but then he has multiple series where he's getting 12 rebounds and averaging 4 blocks?
Yeah.
It's the same level of shit, right?
Well, that's what I was about to say, is that because Hoops and I talk off screen, somebody was trying to make an argument with me that they have, I think, I think he was trying to exemplify that Draymond Green and Carmelo Anthony are closer to each other than a lot of people think. And to me, I don't think it's close. I think Hoops agreed on that.
Yeah.
But it was because of what people do when they evaluate players all of a sudden. The barbershop talk. It's the checklist argument. Well, Carmelo scores more, but Draymond can lead his team in rebounding, can lead his team in assists, can lead his team in defense, and so on and so forth. So it's like by the checklist, Draymond is a better player than Carmelo Anthony, and that's just we're in the year 2025. We have brains, we can process information. We can't just go and simplify things by just doing a checklist.
It's an overvaluation. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this. That's like too, though. It depends what you need. If you have a, like a Steve Nash led team, Suns, that's like close to being a championship level team, I want Draymond on that team. I don't want Melo. But if I have nobody on my team and I got to build around somebody, I want Melo. You know what I mean? It just depends on what, kind of like this. Overall, in terms of greatness, because I got into this today about this, Draymond Green would be considered a greater defender than Shaq, right? If I'm trying to win games, what Shaq can do defensively is more applicable to winning than what Draymond does. The fact that Shaq can get me 20 rebounds and 8 blocks and Draymond can't, you know what I mean? And it's just, and he can hold the post better. Like 93 Shaq is better defensively than any year of Draymond Green.
2000 Shaq. I mean, 2000 Shaq, who's second in DPOY. I know Draymond wins the DPOY in 2017, right. But even 2000 Shaq was second in DPOY. He was anchoring the number 1 defense and is, I think, first in defensive rating, second defensive rebounds, I think second or third in blocks. That's more valuable than what Draymond's giving you.
No, I agree. What were we going to say, Hoops, though, on it?
Oh, with the Melo Draymond thing, it's an overvaluation of role players on championship teams. It's kind of like, do you have James Worthy over Dominique Wilkins? I don't think you should. But because James Worthy is a star role player on a championship caliber team, I think he often gets elevated into different conversations that he shouldn't be. I saw the Bleacher Report rankings that everybody got apoplectic over the summer. I got apoplectic over one thing. It was that James Worthy was ranked 40 spots higher than Jason Tatum. And we know Jason Tatum led his team to the title, but since James Worthy, I guess, has 3 championships and Jason Tatum has 1, he's got to be 30 spots ahead of him. It's, again, you're overvaluing, that piece might fit, but like Tony said, if you need a player to get your team to the playoffs, Draymond Green's not going to do that as the best player on his team, right? James Worthy might be able to do that as the best player on his team, but you'll be out in the first round. I think that's what the 93 Lakers were, out in the first round. So again, it's based on, I think what's more valuable is, can you be the best player on a playoff team or on a contender team? Not can you be a role player or a star role player or a secondary player on a title team.
Well, not only that too, and this leads me to 2 things, and this goes with the LeBron, because I don't know. I think we're all kind of here. You guys got him as the GOAT, but I don't see you guys like fanning out saying my glorious king and all that. It seems it's one way or another, generally speaking. It's either you love him or you hate him or whatever, and I'm just neutral on him. I love him for the things that he did well, and I dislike the things he didn't do well. And I called out, like, anytime people always say 2018 LeBron's the best player I've ever seen play. Any dude that sits opposite end of his team's bench going into overtime in game 1 will never be the best version of somebody I've seen play. You know what I mean? What that does to the team collectively, shit like that. I get it. He played amazing up until game 1 and then fucked it all up. I kind of say it goes like it's like being faithful for 20 years and then cheating after 20 years. Doesn't matter you're faithful for the first 20. Now you're a fucking cheater. That's just kind of how that goes. So I think shit like that fucks up his shit. You know what I mean? That's just my opinion on it. But it goes like this. Why do you think people, like, to me, people over-evaluate Chris Bosh? You know what I mean? Because they're constantly he had Wade, and Wade is a fine argument. You know what I mean? If you want to say I'll take Wade's best season over Kobe's best season, I won't argue. I get the argument. You know what I mean? Now for the career, obviously you want Kobe, but top couple peak Wade years, if you want those over Kobe years, I think you have an argument that he peaks better as a basketball player than Kobe. I think that's an argument there. But yeah, this Bosch thing, like, and I don't know where you guys, I'll throw it to you first, Jules. I was in this argument. I will take 39-year-old, 38-year, however old he was that year, 39, I think, 2003 Karl Malone over any version of Chris Bosch on the Raptors. Karl Malone is a better player, even at 39, than 25, 26-year-old Chris Bosch. He holds the paint down better. You can't move him as much. His screens are crisper. His passing's better. His defense is better. Nobody likes to fuck with him as much, like mentally and physically because of what he is. He leads the Jazz in a harder conference to more wins than Bosch can lead. With that. And I got to an argument with somebody about this. So why do you think people hype up Bosch, or where do you guys stand on Bosch? And then I'll use the example. Would you rather have last year Jazz Malone or any version of Chris Bosch on the Raptors? Jules, I'll throw it to you first.
So it's funny that you mentioned this, because I've had this debate with a cohort of mine on my other podcast, is that he's definitively tried to make the argument that he tried to take Chris Bosch over Jason Tatum. He's very low on Jason Tatum, and I like lose my mind. I had the same expression. It's like that. Yeah, it's bad, and like it's because of what he was doing on the Raptors. Cool, he's getting bounced mostly in the first round. Jason Tatum is continuously making Eastern Conference Finals over. So that's besides the point. What I think people are over-evaluate Chris Bosch is essentially his role on those Heat title teams, because I think they tried to Kevin Love specifically, when he gets on the Cavs, they immediately understand, or at least try to put him in the role of like, okay, Kevin Love is now going to be Chris Bosch in this situation. What can he, K-Love lead to? Because Chris Bosch is, being tasked to, sometimes be your main rim protector, sometimes be a really good outlet passer, score, and in certain fourth quarters. So he does stuff really, really well. I have him, I think, like, trying to think off my list, like either ranked 14 or like 15 all time for power forward. So I like Chris Bosch, but when you evaluate somebody like against a Karl Malone, who ironically I am low on, I would agree, Tony, that I would take a Karl Malone in age 39 season over, I think, any Chris Bosch year, because I think he's a far superior defender. I think he's a little bit more consistent scoring. Yes, the versatility isn't there because he's not shooting threes, but he's consistent enough to where he's being tasked to be a pretty good rim protector with Greg Olsztag, and being able to constantly be, a first option on a playoff team, while Chris Bosch is giving you 24 and I don't even know. I don't even remember the amount of rebounds.
His last year in Toronto, I believe he was 24 and 10, maybe 24 and 11.
And yeah, and Malone's last year is 21, 8, and 5, basically, something like that. Malone's a much better passer and playmaker too.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
People, so with Chris Bosch, it's a couple of things. One, I think people look at his years in Toronto, his last couple of years in Toronto, which are pretty good statistically, but it's kind of like good stats, bad team guy. Really, his best role is being the tertiary guy on a team like Miami, and I think that's part of it too. Is that when that team joined up, it was so unprecedented that he kind of like gets put in that same elevation as Dwayne Wade and LeBron James are, and even though he's not even close to that tier of player, and it's this notion that like, oh well, Chris Bosch had to like sacrifice his game. Like, no, this is the game Chris Bosch was always meant to play, because Chris Bosch, we saw enough of Chris Bosch as a number one option. Even after he left the Heat, what happened? Even after LeBron left the Heat, what happened? He was still an 18-8 guy, and with Dwayne Wade there, even before he was injured. So I think it's a couple things. Yeah, you're seeing the numbers he's putting up in Toronto, but again, he's not elevating his team. He's not playmaking. He's not a great offensive engine. And I think that Raptors team had enough talent at the time to do a little bit better than they did. And I think the other part of it is, being part of that big three and he makes 10 all-star teams, even though a few of them he definitely shouldn't have made. And so I think people I I think people look at him like more of like a James Worthy. He's a good tertiary role player, star role player on a championship team, but he is not a franchise player.
Well, so I'll say this. Off the top of my head, I think it's that Chicago series, and then I think it might be 08 his series or whatever. But just off the top of my head, and I can't think of any more, maybe there's one more, but just to show you what type of Chris Bosh. Derek Fisher's best series, I would only take 2 Chris Bosh series over that.
Yeah.
You think of all the things he would do, I would take 2 Chris Bosh series over Derek Fisher's peak performance in the playoffs for a series, just to show you that. Now, when we got on this, because we got on the subject of LeBron, and people just can't get off the LeBron thing. Why do you think? Because this is the way I look at it.
I'm probably older than that guy too, by the way. But
well, at least me. Yeah, when I look at, we brought up the '80s Lakers. Okay, the way I look at it is like I think that Western Conference, as we just went over in '87 they went through a 37-win team, 42-win team, 30. LeBron's had way tougher competition than that, right? And people always knock that, but I don't hear people really knocking Magic for his. Me, the way I've always looked at it is like I think Magic arguably has the toughest finals competition of all time. So I'm going to focus on the tough shit that he went through. Same thing with LeBron; he had tough finals of him. So I'll focus on that. Then when we factor in, he still had to go through those Celtics teams, in 2011. That was a good team. The 62-win Bulls in 2011, that was a good team. He dismantled them, but a 59-win. There are no bad 59-win teams that he did. That he swept the Raptors with, and he really looking other than him, he shouldn't have beat that team. So how come you don't think Magic gets that same level of hate, especially when you factor in 37 wins, 42? That means the average team that he played won like 39 games. Why don't you think Magic gets that same type of hate like LeBron does for playing in a weaker conference?
Because Magic didn't elevate. Because Magic's a great player, a certified top 10 all-time player, the greatest point guard of all time, all of that. I'm a big Magic Johnson fan, but he didn't, because Magic Johnson didn't elevate himself to where he threatens the legacy of people's favorite players. That's really what it is. I mean, LeBron is the most scrutinized and criticized player in NBA history by far. And part of that is too, LeBron also had plays in the era where we're just paying attention. We're able to track more of what's going on in the NBA, and we're like living in the moment now. So we've seen all of the Raptors and the Raptors teams, or like whoever the hell he had to face. I don't know, those bad Bucks teams with Brandon Jennings or whomever, but we don't remember like the Dale Ellis Sonics, right? Or the Alex English Nuggets necessarily, because it's not as fresh in our memory and it's not as highly covered as it probably should be. So I think
Warriors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of that. So I think that's probably why. One, people don't like LeBron for whatever stupid fucking reason they have to not like him, and two, I just think the era that we're in with the social media and like how easily accessible the NBA is now, and the film and all of that stuff. It's just, and how fresh it is in people's mind. I think that's probably why.
Jules?
I think it's strictly because he's won. So Magic in those playoff series is basically giving you just a rough estimate of 19-12 for the most part, give or take. And he's beating up on these teams and making it look easy with the teammates that he has and so on and so forth. But getting into kind of the stuff, that's why my number one thing when it comes to evaluating players, I care about what their production is and how they're translating in the playoffs and how it looks. Because of the fact that somebody, like I mentioned it before, Giannis, right? Giannis loses against the Celtics team in 22, but he's basically giving you 33 and 15, and he loses 5. So because he lost and is giving you those numbers, he's going to get taxed on the fact that, he wasn't good enough to bring up the team. Well, in eye test and in production and by final box scores, that doesn't lead to wins. But you're not going to sit here and tell me 33 and 15 being the best player on your team doesn't move the needle enough to win. So when somebody is has a better team and is winning more continuously, they get the benefit of the doubt because that team is good, no matter who they're playing against, compared to a player that can be just straight up outplaying you, outproducing you, and whatever, but their team isn't as good, and they get taxed for that. A great example of this, the 01 76ers. Yeah, in my opinion, was somewhat deserving of that MVP, and they make that finals run, but everybody glorifies that one win that he got against the Lakers, that really good Lakers team, but nobody gives the same type of, flowers to James Harden and Chris Paul in 2018 when they take that 2018 Warriors team to 7 games in the Western Conference Finals. What would you, again, strictly about wins, I'm taking a person that can give me 3 games amount of wins against a comparatively all-time great team compared to 1. So there's no argument, regardless of what you can make, because I have more wins underneath my belt compared to less wins with less production.
Where do you add in on top of that with the Giannis thing too? Is by the eye test, like he plays hard. Like Giannis has been my favorite player for about 10 years in the league currently, and he plays hard. So like, there's no knock on him really. It's like he's playing his ass off and all that. Where do you think that factors in too? Because I enjoy it. Like just to toot my own horn, I saw Giannis coming before I saw anybody else. By year 2, I think this dude is going to be a superstar and all that. And to show you that I'm not infallible, when the Nuggets traded Yusuf Jokic and shit over, I thought he was better than Jokic. I didn't understand why they were trading. So I don't bat 100%, but I did call Giannis. So where do you think that factors in watching Giannis too? On that, he plays hard.
I love the fact that he plays hard. He's one of my favorite players currently, and because I young people that this guy was saying is that I never got to see somebody like a prime Shaquille O'Neal in the 90s when he's running up and down court and being an athletic freak of nature. I always equivalent Giannis to a young Shaq on those Orlando Magic teams where he's just taking it coast to coast. Nobody's being able to stop him, and that he's imposing his will physically on the game. And you basically that's why teams have to quote unquote build the wall to equivalent Giannis to not have the same type of production for these specific series. The 19 Raptors is the most highlighted one for myself because they had the bodies of Kawhi, Serge, and Marc Gasol to get somebody who was a MVP to now kind of have that production drop with a talented roster behind him and lose the series. So again, that's why I always care about production, what you're doing, how does it look, and does that equivalent to wins? Yes, but I'm not going to necessarily tax somebody if, again, somebody's giving me 30 and 15 as a top, arguably 2 or 3 player in the NBA, but his team isn't adequate enough.
And he's playing hard. It's not like he's
playing hard
off.
I just looked it up because I know he played great in the series, but I wanted to give the exact numbers. But I'll just give you Game 5 against the Pacers this year. Now, this series is over, right? They're down 3-1. Right. They're undermanned. Dame Lillard's hurt. They've got Kyle Kuzma out there as their maybe second best player. And he gives you in Game 5, they lose by 1, 30 points, 20 rebounds, 13 assists, right? That is, he comes back down from 0-2 as well.
It's insane.
He drops a 50 ball in the Game 6. He's one of my favorite players too. I love Giannis. I think he gets a little too much. I think he gets a little too much flack because people have an overemphasis on skill. When they say he can't shoot or he only drives to the basket. Well, you know what? It fucking works, right? Fucking worked in 2021 where he dropped a 50 ball in against the Suns, and no one. It's kind of the same thing with Shaq, right? It's I don't care that Shaq only has a baby hook and a drop step, right? I don't give a shit. What I give a shit is he puts the ball in the fucking basket and he wins basketball games. That's what Giannis does. Not to mention Giannis is a great playmaker and all that stuff as well.
Right.
He's at his peak, he was arguably the best defender in the league, 1 DPOY. So,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. If I was a scout watching every player in the league, I would probably pick him number 1. You know what I mean? In terms of a basketball player. I probably would.
Consensus top 2 players in the league are like Jokic and SGA, and I'm like, I don't really like. I think Giannis is a better player than SGA.
Oh, definitely.
I think he's
definitely.
I agree.
So we're gonna get into a new segment. We're gonna start doing this. So Hoops, be on the watch out for yours. Jules, you're the one that. But we're gonna start off with our new clips. So we're gonna do the intro, and then we're gonna go into what happened, and then we'll play it. But our new segment is called "You've Embarrassed Yourself."
You've embarrassed yourself.
I'm being honest, bro. This is why I don't talk a lot about those other players. Cause I haven't seen a lot of games.
You've embarrassed yourself.
I haven't seen a lot of games, and that's why I don't.
It shows. Oh,
You know
it
what
shows.
I'm saying? No, it don't show. Homie. I lit the Shaq and Kobe thing.
You've embarrassed yourself.
So let's get into a little backstory. It was Jules was there for it. Hoops, you missed it, but I found out recently this week, unless you're a top 2 guard in the NBA, you are obsolete. Did you know that? From the guard position. Yes. So from the guard position, if you're the top 2. So just to see how far this guy went, we were talking about DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan in 2016, where would you rank him as a player? Hoops, just off the top of your head. We're not asking, but just roundabout.
I would say top 10-ish, top 15, comfortably.
Okay, cool. So at the bare minimum, we'll say a top 20 player, right? Just for the sake of argument. Okay, where would you have Leandro Barbosa?
Fucking 50, I guess. I don't know.
So I would say Leandro Barbosa probably bottom top 200 player. This is what I found out. This is what I found out this
Let me
week.
ask you this question. I just want to make sure I got this straight. So you think, let's just use the Warriors, right? So if the Warriors could have traded, I don't know, Leandro Barbosa for DeMar DeRozan, you would have said, no, keep Leandro.
I would say go for somebody else.
That wasn't the option. It was, hey, we want to trade you DeMar for Leandro Barbosa.
I would say no. I want to trade for somebody else.
Okay, and there's no other offers.
Would you not take Nemo?
I'm not taking DeMar.
So tell me what you think of that, because DeMar DeRozan is obsolete, but Leandro Barbosa at the 200 spot. That's a better option. What do you think?
Yeah, again, it's like what we talked about. It's an overemphasis on, like, imagine DeMar DeRozan on the imagine all the Sean Livingston like mid-range game that you saw on the Warriors. Now imagine that's fucking DeMar DeRozan, who's like a reliable
On steroids.
25 point per game scorer and the best player on like a 59-win team, right? Like that would make the Warriors, without, they wouldn't even need Kevin Durant at that point. They'd probably be the greatest team of all time if that's their like 3rd or 4th option. Crazy.
And how do you feel about any guard past the number 2 option is obsolete?
Tell that to Chauncey Billups. Tell that to Chauncey Billups.
Well, he was obsolete because that's what originally we started off. We found out once Jerry West and Oscar Robertson got in the league, this is how it started. It made Bob Cousy obsolete.
I mean, it doesn't make any. That doesn't make any sense. Once Jerry West and Oscar Robertson got into the league, Bob Cousy won another 3-4 more championships. 5?
3. He won 3.
Yeah, 3. So when he retired, 63, 64, they came in 60.
They came in 60. He retired in 63. So
he retired. So they won another 3 more championships. And now he's obsolete.
And arguably the 2nd best player on the team.
Yes. Right.
Mm-hmm. Jules, what do you think about it? You were there for
it. It's unbelievable. Again, I find it so funny that it was a specific word, obsolete. So basically, we're overvaluing the what these systems and what the analytics are trying to push now into, like, okay, DeMar DeRozan at that time wasn't a notoriously good point shooter, and that's why we bring up Barbosa. So because of the fact that I'm getting one more point on a little bit better efficiency, that means you as a top 15 player, regardless of what you're fucking doing, you're obsolete now because I can't shoot the three more than somebody else. That is absurd to me. And again, I couldn't agree more. Tony, he's embarrassed himself.
No, that is the new thing. So once again, just to show you guys, this is a reminder that he has.
You've embarrassed yourself.
I'm being honest, bro. This is why I don't talk a lot about those other players. Cause I haven't seen a lot of games.
You've embarrassed yourself.
I haven't seen a lot of games, and that's why I don't.
It shows. Oh,
You know
it
what I'm
shows.
No, it don't show. Homie. I lit the Shaq and Kobe thing.
You've embarrassed yourself.
So I think that's about it for the show. Anybody else want to bring anything up? Any points we didn't hit?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think we covered some of the stuff. Unfortunately, you know, we have the trolley Jordan fans kind of take up most of our time.
It's honestly, that's what I'll say. It is. I appreciate LeBron again. I have him as the greatest player of all time. I think it's boring to talk about LeBron all the time. I enjoyed the conversation for the most part, but I think everybody that spends most of their time talking about LeBron needs to find other players to talk about.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the only thing, my favorite thing to really enjoy talking about now is how Kobe's not top 10. That's really my favorite enjoyment because everybody wants to talk about how
Those are the same people.
Well, right, but they want to argue that he's top 3, top 2, you know what I mean? And, you know, and when I first saw it with Steven Jackson and then lied and said, when did LeBron pass Kobe? By 2016, there was no argument anymore for Kobe over LeBron. So that would be the answer for that. So anyways, for Hoops, for Jules, I'm Tony. We'll catch you next week. Remember to bless the ones who broke you because they're the ones who built you.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
No, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.